Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is a lecture I gave a while back concerning a foundational theory and philosophy of art, which I would here like to represent. So, I'd like to present a vision of art, in particular, trying to get to the essence of what art is, according to the mystical philosophy of the oneness of being. I would perhaps spend a minute here mentioning that this idea of essences is something which we will not find and cannot find in modern philosophy and modern thought. For the modern zeitgeist does not accept the idea of there being real essences to things, that things are merely purely subjective, interrelated bundles of varying concepts without any canonical definition or essence, or therefore real framework and system. In a modern definition, there is no such thing as a criterion of art. There is no way to judge whether something is art or is not art. And we find in certain modern exhibitions the blurring of these boundaries. For example, in the Tate Modern, where I was at the other day, there are some works of art which are merely sculptures of chairs or an ordinary object, perhaps slightly perturbed or permuted in its appearance, but really being a configuration of the ordinary, the mundane. And I would add here that I'm definitely not some advocate against modern art. I'm not an elitist. There's benefit in all these things. However, I believe that there is such a thing as art, and I believe that there is a criterion of what is art and what is not art, and what is good art and what is not good art. But be that as it may, that is not the purpose of this talk, but rather it is a fruit which comes from it. The purpose here is to philosophize, to ponder, to contemplate the meaning of art as a means of communion with that which is profound, sacred, deeper. The point here is to see, or to rather consecrate the way towards experiencing art as a portal into the infinite, because that is the traditional conception of art, as it was pristinated in days of old, which here we seek to repristinate in these modern times. So, as the first line I write in my book, in a biblical style of English, in the biblical style of elocution, but rather experience, in the beginning, before all things, is being cast in the image that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. What we mean by this in the beginning, or rather what is meant, because it's something beyond us, in the beginning refers not to just a temporal point of beginning, but it refers to that which is in principle, that which was first, not just temporally, in a sequence of time, but that which was first in the orders of being, that which is prior to all other things, in being itself, that which is therefore the foundation upon which all rests, the archetypal principle from which it is begotten, the source, the seed, the origin, the reality. That thing, the absolute, that which is before all other things, is being itself, with a capital B. By being, we mean the oneness of being, and by things, all things, we mean the dimensions of multiplicity. I speak here of the mystical experience which brings together all shades of multiplicity, all the spectrums of colors, of manifestations, in the pure and serene light of unity. And I mean also, by being, the three dimensions of consciousness. At the deepest level, being, which is being itself. What we mean by this term, being with a big capital B, is the pure presence of consciousness, what we might call isness. The isness which is before the whatness, because before we ask what a thing is, it is. It is before the how of what it is. That pure isness, the fact that things are, that is the first experience, the first modality. But rather, even more so, it is the beginning of all things themselves. Before all things is being. Before the thing is the thing which it is, it must be to begin with. That is being in its naked, sheer, absolute aspect. But then being coils into itself as it erupts forth from its august darkness. Also, it conceives itself. That self-conception, that self-reflection of being, as if one is looking into a mirror and contemplating his own visage, that is thought. That is thought, and that is consciousness. So we speak of these three orders of being, being itself, to bethink and to bespeak. And now to bespeak is language. First, we experience things as they are. Or we rather, we have the foundation of experience in which things rest. Then we cognize the things as they are, the what of what they are. In consciousness, we are conscious of them. And then we can internalize and reflect and perceive that conscious experience through language. And by language, I do not just mean oral articulation upon the tongue. I do not just mean a communication unto alterity, unto another, but also I intend by language the communion of consciousness with itself, in ipseity rather than alterity. Now, what relevance does this have to art? Well, I suppose before we speak of art and what it is, we speak of the consciousness of art, the experience of art. And therefore, the experience of art has these three dimensions. The experience of the thing as perhaps in a modality in which it transcends the art piece, experiencing the thing as it is, not just as a work of art, but as being itself. That is the highest form of communion with art. Then there is the conscious aspect of art as it is art. Actually seeing the painting hung up in a museum exhibition. We are conscious of art itself. And then there is the self-reflection of the artistic experience as it is communicated and conveyed unto others in language, in art criticism and art philosophy and commentary. So pausing here, we might see that there are two fundamental poles or two dimensions of experience. In one dimension, let us begin with the ordinary, everyday, mundane experience of the manyness of things. That here I am, sat in my office, and I see many things. I cognize things as they are. The phone is the phone, my hand is the hand, the wall, the ceiling, the floor. We cognize the many parts of the art piece, its color, its texture, its frame, its reference. And the mode of operation of consciousness is scientific. By scientific, I mean it is rational, it is systematic, it is ratiocinative in the sense that an order of concepts is amenable, that I can argue about the structure of the art piece in a clear sequence of logical arguments. I can speak of its geometry, of its architecture, of its symmetry and its proportion, and how each of these mathematical aspects colludes to produce a certain sense and experience and ambience. And I can speak about the artist, his surroundings and his environment, and his philosophy, and how it effuses through the fragrance of the work, and how certain artistic qualities and experiences permeate through the fabric of the art piece. But there is another dimension of consciousness, one I believe the ancients were very familiar with, more than we are, but one which we have forgotten to the extent that we have lost it or sometimes deny it altogether. That is the unitive experience, the experience of being itself, not just the manyness of things, not just the many forms and parts of the art piece, but the very unity of the composition. For that unity of the composition pertains to the whole which the art piece is, pertains not just to the parts and to the colors, and to the individual expressions which the artist's pen has given life to. But the unity of the art piece is that experience of being itself, permeating, vibrating, resounding inside of the art. That is the mystical, intuitive dimension of consciousness. The dimension of consciousness which communes with the thing itself. That is the oneness of being, which is prior to the manyness of things. That unitive experience sees reality as a continuous and infinite tapestry of qualities, where things are not discrete blobs or bits. They are not atoms which can be cut out and neatly defined into their own sense categories, into their own objects. We cannot so clearly distinguish the two objects of the art piece, or the two aspects of composition, the two colors, the two frames of reference. But each thing, right, we're not denying the realities that there's two separate colors or two different proportions at work here. But when we isolate or supposedly isolate one, we understand that reality as a focal point, rather than a dot, a binary of black and white. It's a spectrum, a haze, a cloud of meanings. A focal point in the same way that we can be conscious of one object by our vision, by the focus of our ocular perception. But that focal point is a concentration of the all into the one. Now, a good art, a good work of art, has not only perhaps a set of focal points which hone and concentrate the energy and power of the work, which hone the senses into some sigsy of ecstatic perception, which funnel one's consciousness, or rather, I would say expand one's consciousness in a sense of unity. It has these things. It has the center of the work. But a good work of art is become a center itself. A good work of art not only has a focal point, but is itself a focal point of reality. A good work of art serves as a portal into the infinite, as I spoke before. It serves itself as in communion with this experience of the all, this mystical experience which is before ordinary sense perception, though we have forgotten. That is the mystical, intuitive mode of consciousness, in communion with the source of being itself. But and we might call that the sacred. That is the experience of the sacred, and those things which are unities are themselves sacred. Wherefore art really is sacred objects. We cannot so simply divide or conceive artwork without conceiving some form of mystical rite, theurgical practice, religious invocation in that object. A good work of art invites invites worship. It is almost impossible not to worship and contemplate when given divine art. It draws that forth from the self, draws the self into some sort of orbit with the work, pulling it therefore into a deeper well of gravitational attraction beyond itself. But I might contrast that to this mundane, ordinary, systematic, scientific, rational mode of consciousness which we are heirs to for most of our sense-waking life, which does see the discrete, sees things as individual bits. It is this or it is that. It is black or it is white. It is the arm or it is the leg. It is blue or it is yellow. Cuts things up into bits. Into this mode, things are individual, finite entities. And I do not mean to degrade this experience or say it is somehow evil. No, it is necessary to function in the world. But it is purely that. It is functional. It is functional. But good art, yes, it has to be functional. There's no such thing as pure, formless, mystical experience. I mean, at least not in an articulable way. That would be something else. There is no work of art which is formless. By definition, art needs to have form. And so by definition, art needs to be intelligible, needs to have ratio and proportion and harmony and mathematical wholeness and integrity, needs to have the parts of its compositions, its discrete qualities, its finite definitions, its individual characteristics. But no, true art has not only these, but it has that center. It has a mystical center which brings together all the parts of its composition into that continuous, holistic, integrated, infinite experience. And for that reason, the prototype of all art, and arguably the singular form of all art, is the circle.